Picture this. You're studying up for a class and you realize today's discussion might get a little tense. Students have big opinions on the topic, and you want to make sure everyone feels safe to speak up. So, what do you do? Welcome to Off Syllabus with Manny, where we talk about the hardest parts of teaching, the ones that do not make it to the syllabus. Today, we are talking about setting the stage for tough conversations. Joining me today is Rachel Piontak. She's from the Institute of Citizens and Scholars. She's here to share some quick practical strategies for creating classroom agreements and building connection through low rep strategies. So let's dive in. Rachel, I actually really like the idea of like agreeing before disagreeing. To you, what does agree before disagreeing really mean, and why is it important?
Great question. And also, hi, Manny. Long time no see. So the idea is really in part a response to the agree to disagree phrase, which on its face sounds kind of placating and is often a conversation ender rather than a conversation builder. So agree before you disagree then means that you're building scaffolding into your discussions, whether they're politically polarizing or not. So to your example in the picture this, that maybe you realize, oh, today's the day we're going to talk about the hot button issue. Or maybe it's just the beginning of a semester and you want to set the stage for those conversations to happen later on. So pursuing an agree before you disagree mindset and those activities really helps anchor your class in trust, connection, and respect. It's like creating a space of deliberative openness where folks feel psychologically safe enough to stay in the conversation and in the disagreement long enough to understand why others may see something differently. And that's important because students come to class with different baggage, different lived experiences, different worldviews. And so without building that trust and connection, they may never know if it's safe to actually voice their opinion or push back on an idea, which is why we need to quote the title of this podcast, agree before we disagree.
Yeah, and along those lines, talking about off syllabus, right? So building connection might not be your primary learning outcome, but it's something that is very important. I think it plays a big role in allowing students to share
Mhm.
what they believe and how they feel. So my next question for you is about like activities. So do you have any fun or like go-to activities that you like using to build connection between your students or between the instructor and the students?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer. Yeah, because if we're conceptualizing connection as something that comes in tandem with trust and mutual respect, then it's paramount to the classroom learning experience. And I'm only going to talk about two ways, even though I led off with there's so many. The first one would be creating community agreements as a way to help students feel connected and building that strong foundation for dialogue. Um, this is also called group agreements, ground rules. Different campuses call it different things, but it's how you create the conditions for that type of productive disagreement or collaborative problem solving. Not all hard conversations have to be butting heads. Sometimes it's just a tough issue and we're talking through it together, even if everyone is kind of on the same side. Um, so I won't go into the minutia of creating group agreements, but suffice it to say that co-creating these alongside students is really crucial. It will absolutely take longer, but the buy-in and the ownership that comes as a result is really worth it. And it helps you to suss out what are the expectations that students have of each other and that students have of the professor in order to create that meaningful learning environment. And then a very simple one, if you've half checked out by hearing something that sounds like it's going to take up too much time in my already packed calendar, would just be one word check-ins. So starting the class off with a rapid fire, what did you have for breakfast today? Where are the best burritos on campus, which is always a hot button issue on our institution's land with lots of options. So just asking students something really quick to get them talking, to get them connected to each other, and to start seeing themselves as part of that community and seeing each other's humanity in that. So, really quick, easy way to.
Yeah, I used to use share with me your school mascot
Mm,
because it's not very intrusive and it's not really personal either. But then some schools have very random mascots, and we will actually have very fun conversations about, oh, that is your mascot? How does that look like on a shirt? What is it like the female version of that? Like it sort of makes it fun.
yeah,
It's very like not intrusive.
I love
I
that.
Yeah, I used to use that. So we talk about that faculty, some of the concerns is about time. So
Mhm.
how much time they can put into this. I will say another concern is often about the type of course. I'm gonna call it the vibe. But like, so when you're in I'm gonna make this up, I'm not a political science, but like if you're in a political science course, like you might be more prone to or to expect we are gonna talk a lot and we're gonna discuss a lot. But if you're in a STEM class, like I used to teach chemistry, so like you're as a student, the expectation is like you're gonna come in and somebody's gonna talk at you for a long time. I'm not saying that's what chemists do,
Of
but just
course
in
not.
general, is a perception. Um, do you have any ideas or any insights about like how do you pick an activity that sort of fits the vibe of the class?
Yes, absolutely. And I can't say vibe naturally. I'm just not useful enough, I suppose. But assessing to your point, assessing what the vibe is needed for the content is an integral first step. And you're right that more of a discussion based, say, upper level sociology class is going to have different needs than a general chemistry class. But at its core, it's all about problem solving, whether those are problems on paper or societal problems that we're, trying to figure out solutions for. And at the basis of that problem solving is the need to trust each other and to trust the professor that they can be vulnerable because there's going to be spaces where I don't know whether it's I can't even insert like a chemistry example here, whether it's fill in the blank chemistry problem or it's I don't know what we do about this, or I don't know if this philosophy applies in this case. And so allowing students to voice when they don't know and to trust that they've got each other's backs is where what these connection games or connection activities all have in common. And so even if when you're establishing group agreements, for example, even if you're not saying, okay, we're not going to attack each other's personal identities, or maybe you say, we're going to use I statements when discussing our opinion on something. That might not come up in chemistry in the day to day. No one's going to be saying, well, I feel personally affronted by this chemistry problem. But people are going to need to know that their classmates respect them, that they're not going to laugh when they ask questions. That was always a common one that would come up in my students' group agreements when they would create them, is that nobody laugh if they ask a question that seems stupid. And so being able to know this is what I can expect when I come into play. And it's on the professor too to say, what are your expectations of me? Is it that I'm responding to your email within 5 business days? Or is it that I will give you at least 5 minutes during office hours, even if I'm super packed? Whatever the case may be, having those expectations that way is also really key. And then knowing that I'm speaking to you now, Manny, you as the professor is holding that line, is saying if somebody goes against that, if someone, you know, laughs at another student, that you say, hey, remember we created these during, the first day, the first week of class. This is what we agreed to. Let's keep this in mind as we move forward. These are the expectations, etc. So really modeling too that you are holding to those agreements. All of those contribute to matching the vibe to the need in each class. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think agreements go beyond just like discussions because even like I'm gonna go to chemistry now, they have to work together in the lab. They have to be able to communicate. There is some level of like needing somebody else to complete
Yeah.
the work, and that can create some tension. So like I feel like I mean, this is why we're having this conversation, because we both agree that community guides are important for just about any classroom. So let's say I want to go back to Manny, and I need to try this out, right? Like I bought it. I agree with you, Rachel. You convinced me. So do you have like an idea of how to? If I ask you, how do I start this? What would you say?
Start small and start early. And then you would pause, and then I would continue, which is to say, determine what it is that your course needs. So if it's more student interaction, more student engagement, students sharing their opinions, kind of leaning into those difficult moments, then perhaps more trust and connection activities is what you want to start with. And that goes back to earlier in our conversation about really quick one-word check-ins. It does not have to be deep. What was your school mascot? What's the best kind of shoe for walking around this campus? You know, what are you most looking forward to about the holiday break? It can be truly anything, but getting students connected to each other and speaking truly, it seems such a simple thing, but having folks speak up at the beginning of class means that they are more likely to speak throughout the rest of class. And I know we're all thinking of that student who we wish would speak a little less. But for the most part, we want students to be leaning into these types of conversations. So I would say that's a really easy way to start. You can do, if you don't have time for everyone to say their answer out loud because maybe you have a large lecture hall, doing a quick pair share to say, here's the question, it's up on the board. You have 10 seconds each, that's it. Talk to each other, and in 20 seconds, I'm going to bring this back around, and I'm going to throw out some of the most common answers I've heard in the past. You know, if it's the mascot questions, Jaguars. And I want you to raise your hand if that was your answer. Look around, look at all you Jaguars. You know, some sort of connection to bring it back together to the larger group. That takes 4 minutes, I'll say, max. And that's enough time for you to have a coughing fit in the middle if you need to. So something like that is a great way to start. If you have more time, being able to allow students that ownership and really drive that group agreement creation, that's going to take definitely more time. You're going to need to work in small groups, again, depending on your content and your course size, but very well worth the time if you can make it happen.
Yeah. And just very quickly, just to end something sort of fun, do you have any funny, surprising, or unexpected stories about engaging in with your students, like building some community guides?
Yeah, so many. But because I've been talking about group agreements so much, I'll just end with after teaching for, over a half dozen semesters, I finally had a group who, in creating their group agreements for public speaking, they came up with the rule or the agreement that we want everyone else in this class to fake it till they make it, to look like they're paying attention, even if they're not really, because they recognize that the anxiety that they were experiencing in giving these speeches was quelled a bit when they knew that everyone else was at least going to be nodding along, even if they were like, asleep behind the eyes, but they were looking like they were engaged. And that was really important to them. And I never would have thought to bring that up as a group agreement, but it was something they enthusiastically wanted. And I really do think it helped change, wow, to repeat again, change the vibe of the class for that whole semester. So that was a fun one.
And you said that you cannot say vibe. It fits you perfectly. And you should include them more often in your
I will try to abide my vibe speech. We'll see.
Perfect. Okay, so big thanks to Rachel for sharing how small moments of connection can make a big difference in the conversations that happen in the classroom. For more resources on helping students engage in tough conversations, check the links below. And remember, teaching goes beyond what's on the syllabus. So thank you.
Thank you.